let's hit it.
And welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
All right, here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm thrilled that you are back with us today. For those of you that are new, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We like to have real conversations with real people who are in the trenches. So that means those diagnosed, family members, a variety of businesses, authors, movie directors, researchers, advocates, and so much more. So maybe, just maybe, you can be our next guest. Feel free to reach out to me at radio@Alzheimer Speaks if it's time for you to share your story. And if you liked our opening music, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. Now, I always like to give a few shout-outs in the beginning here. So I welcome you to join me on the virtual Memory Cafe, Arthur's Memory Cafe, the second and fourth Wednesday each month at 1 p.m. Central Time. But we have people from all over that join us, and you are more than welcome to do so. That is for people with dementia and their care partners. And if you're in Minnesota and close to me by Shoreview, Brookdale North Oaks is sponsoring a Caregiver Connect where we're meeting in person at this point at the Shoreview Community Center, and that takes place at 10 a.m. And we typically meet for an hour there, and it's always enlightening and refreshing, I think, for all of us. And then, of course, I'd be amiss if I didn't give a shout-out to Dementia Map, our global resource directory. My dream of 36 years is finally come to fruition. So please check out dementiamap.com. It is free to use. You don't have to sign in or be a member or remember another password. And if you have a service, product, or tool, we'd love to have you go ahead and input that into the directory. And if you'd like a tour, again, just reach out to me, and I will be more than glad to help you with that. On there, you will find things like Coral Health, who is still allowing people to download two of their apps, Music First and Coral Faith. You're going to hear about the Footbar Walker, which I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit as well. But so many wonderful, wonderful resources, Saltbox TV, Zinnia TV, and so much more. Let's see. I also want to give a shout out to Stories Love Music. This is a free program that is virtual, and it'll be on Tuesdays at 11 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, November 30th to December 14th. They are taking registrations so that you can get the Zoom link. You can find more information out about that by going to storieslovemusic.com/contact-us, and you will get a lot of great things for caregiving. Also want to bring to mind there is a new program out there that you can get involved with to help Alzheimer's research in just minutes from your home. It's with Picnic Health, so just go to picnichealth.com/speaks to sign up and get $25. Picnic Health collects and digitizes all of your medical records into one online account, and then you can consent to share that anonymized data of your records with medical researchers. And by examining real-world data from your medical records, researchers can actually find answers to things that they couldn't find in clinical trials. So know that your story is important and your unique healthcare journey, you are able to share that if you so choose. Also, if you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's and have the power to do so, you can sign up on their behalf. Again, go to picnichealth.com/speaks and get your $25 when you sign up. We're going to hear from the Footbar Walker, and we'll be right back.
Introducing the life-changing Footbar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Footbar Walker revolutionized my care of George. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000. The Footbar Walker opens and closes just like a standard walker. The only thing that is different is the top bar and the foot bar. Does that ever make a difference?
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The Footbar Walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the Footbar Walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the Footbar Walker.
Well, now it's time to introduce our guest, and I'm really excited to have her with us. We have author Patti Davis joining us today to discuss her new book, Floating in the Deep End, How Caregivers Can See Beyond Alzheimer's. Well, most of us understand how difficult dealing with dementia is as a diagnosis, but now add to the journey, like Patti had to, that your dad is not only a public figure, but he is President Ronald Reagan. This is Patti's story, which started in 1994 when her dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And for a decade, her father's illness, Patti felt, as if she was really floating in the deep end. Tossed by waves, carried by currents, and yet not drowning. Her lifelines were her faith, and her stubborn streak helped resolve that look, that past and the cruelty of the disease. And she learned through that stubbornness how to look forward. So we are just so honored to have Patti with us today. She has authored a lot of books, which some of you may or may not know, like The Long Goodbye. She has a support group called Beyond Alzheimer's that is now licensed in Pennsylvania and also in the Cleveland Clinic. And so it's just a thrill to have you with us, Patti. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, before I get into my line of questions with you, I'm also going to have my co-host introduce herself. She is living with dementia. And so, Kate, if you don't mind just giving the audience a little background on yourself, that would be wonderful. What kind of dementia you have and how long you've been living with it.
My name is Kate Lau. I'm originally from Malaysia. I didn't come all the way to America to think that I would get dementia. I came to see America because I want to be free, and I'm now isolated. I live with a form of dementia called BVFTD. It is behavior variant frontotemporal dementia. My long-term memory is intact, but my short-term memory is not good at this stage, meaning that I'm losing words, as in looking at certain things, and I'm pointing as if I need that green thing, but I cannot find the name for it. And if I haven't said it and I've forgotten what I've just said, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer, misdiagnosed in 2012. And after taking more tests, I was diagnosed. I am diagnosed with BVFTD, and I'm living well compared to many others.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for giving that background. That's helpful for people. I'm going to first start by asking Patti a few questions here. So needless to say, you have been personally touched by dementia with your father, President Ronald Reagan. But have there been others in your family or circle of friends that have been diagnosed with a form of dementia as well?
Well, I have many friends who have parents or loved ones with dementia, and I ran my support group for 6 years, so I obviously have I know many stories. In my family, my uncle I think my uncle was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but he was also an alcoholic, so maybe he had Alzheimer's and maybe his brain was just pickled. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be glib, but it sometimes it's a murky diagnosis because alcohol, obviously, in large doses, does affect the brain.
Yeah. Well, and depending on how old your relatives are and when symptoms and signs started to occur. I mean, my mom was told for 10 years it was her hormones. Doctors really didn't talk about it. And it wasn't until my dad had brain cancer and we ended up, saying, okay, this is it. we've got to find somebody else to go to because something's going on here. And it's a very, very common for people to be misdiagnosed and re-diagnosed, and it's, or depression. It can look like so many different things. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I know as I talk with people, when I ask that question, it really isn't to pry, but, so often we hear that, it's only if you have a certain gene. But I hear so many people in their families go, well, yeah, this person, that person. A lot of people had symptoms, weren't necessarily diagnosed, but they're starting to see a pattern now. And they used to call it different things, too. So that made it difficult, too,
yeah.
The hardening of the arteries and all of that. So I think it's going to be interesting as we go forward. I wanted to ask, if you can share with our audience one aspect of the diagnosis that changed your relationship with your dad. And I'm sure there's more than one, but what was the most prominent to you?
Well, I decided right at the beginning that I didn't believe his soul could be sick. I didn't believe his soul could have Alzheimer's, and that really was my grounding for the 10 years of his illness. Obviously he lost cognition, he lost memory, he retreated into a world of his own, which is what happens with Alzheimer's. But I believed that there was an intact soul there, and believing that, I was always looking for the little windows through the disease, which do come, and they're very fleeting, and they're gone in an instant. So if you don't consider the possibility that there might be a soul in there that isn't sick, you will miss those moments. So, even if when I've said that to people and it doesn't fit with their spiritual beliefs or lack of beliefs, I've always said to people, consider the possibility, because it will change how you deal with your loved one. It will open you to the experience of having those moments when there's an aperture through the disease.
Oh, I so agree with you. I've never heard it framed that way, but I'm right there with you. I never gave up hope of our relationship and our connection still being there, and it really did make a big difference. I look at how my brothers dealt with it, and they just saw loss in every direction, and I was looking for what do we still have. And in fact, I was talking with somebody the other day, and I said one of the things that taught me, and I'd love to hear if you saw this too, but different levels of unconditional love I didn't know existed.
Well, I don't think that Alzheimer's doesn't destroy love. I don't believe that. Even if people hold out the fact of their loved one forgetting their name as something really pivotal, and it is pivotal. But I think a lot of times people hold that up as such a huge thing that they've already decided it's going to be a huge thing before it even happens, and a devastating thing before it even happens. And I always try to say to people, even if your parent or your spouse or your sibling or whoever it is forgets your name, that doesn't mean that they have forgotten that they love you. That's beneath the area of cognition. So, we decide really what our experience of an experience is going to be, and I think that's one of the lessons of this disease. If you go into it thinking this is going to be horrible, the person is just lost to me, there's no one home, there's no one there anymore, then that's going to be your experience. If instead you open yourself up to, I don't know what this is going to be. I am willing to learn. I'm willing to see whatever is in front of me, and I'm willing to really open the boundaries of my vision. Then that's going to be your experience. I would recommend the latter.
Oh, definitely. I would agree too. Now, there must have been times, I think all of us go through anger and disappointment and just feeling scared, with this disease and how things progress. How did you deal with all of those feelings?
All of those are valid feelings. We're human beings, and they are valid feelings. The technique that I use, and I've written about it in Floating in the Deep End, particularly with anger, I gave myself a time limit on it. I read somewhere that our normal reaction of anger, our physiological reaction of anger, plays out in something like, 12 minutes or something like that. That's our adrenalized state, and that's what anger is physiologically. Anything beyond that is a choice. So taking that, I thought, okay, then what if I give myself a time limit on my anger? I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes, and I will allow myself to be angry for 30 minutes. But at 30 minutes, I got to stop, right? I'm going to choose to stop at 30 minutes. And, I've recommended it to a lot of people, and it kind of works. And what happens is you do that enough times, at about 15 or 20 minutes, you start to go, okay, I'm really tired of this now. This is not, there's no reward to this anymore. Right. Yep. So you can shorten the time, but you can't lengthen the time. If it gets to 30 minutes, you got to stop.
Yeah.
There's not snooze alarm on it, but you can shorten it.
I love that. Well, and do you feel too anger and fear are usually wrapped in a grief or some form of loss?
I think that anger always sits on top of something else. Usually fear, oftentimes grief, but it always sits on top of something else. And if you think about it, even if we get angry when we're behind the wheel of our car at some driver who just cut us off, underneath our anger is fear that we almost got in an accident and got injured. Mm-hmm. So if you really strip it down, it is always about something else. And I think that's a really good way to dismantle it also. I would never recommend denying your anger. I mean, it's there for a reason, and like I said, we're all human, but managing it and not letting it take us over. I've written in my book, and I believe this really strongly, that there is a big difference between getting angry and being angry. We all get angry. I mean, unless you're hypnotized or something, we all get angry. But we don't want to be an angry person. We don't want just that slow boil to end up being our reality.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love when you're talking about emotions that, hey, everybody has this spectrum of emotions and they're totally normal. But it's how we deal. But it's how we deal with them, and it's been amazing to me on my journey with my mom, who's now been gone for since 2014. So, everything seemed to exacerbate, because I was worn down and tired on top of it all. But I really had to learn to deal much more with my emotions and dig a little bit deeper. And to me, I know it sounds really weird, but it really was a gift in a really strange package. But it was like, gosh, what a blessing to figure this out. Instead of stuffing it because everyone's telling you, you know, don't show your emotions and don't do this and don't do that. And that's one of the things I appreciate, even like when I go speak now, Patti, is, you know, sometimes I get teary-eyed when I'm telling a story and people go, oh, you can't do that as a speaker. And I'm like, I have to show my vulnerability if I expect them to share theirs. And you can't, you have to move through this stuff. And I don't think you can, you know, if you don't accept that it's there, or you're too afraid, you know, to let it show, even to yourself. I know some people won't even show those emotions to themselves in their home alone. So I think that that's just such an important piece of this journey. Now, another big factor is, you know, you're dealing with a chronic illness with no cure in sight. What do you think about end-of-life wishes and financial matters? When the heck do you address that? Because I see so many people wait till the very end.
Yeah, I think you need to do that right at the beginning. I think you need to do it when the diagnosis is made, when that person still has lucid times, because you want them to participate in that, and you know, you want their wishes to be honored. And you know, not only the end of life wishes, but financial things are really important. I mean, you know, someone has to have financial power of attorney, and you don't want to get into a situation where the person who is ill is, you know, I don't know, going online or going on the phone or something and spending all their money on who knows what. A friend of mine just yesterday, actually, whose mother has Alzheimer's, said that her mother had started writing checks to family members for occasions that were not yet, like people's birthdays were, and it wasn't their birthday, and I don't know what all, Christmas, and it's not Christmas yet, and all that, you know, and just mailing off these checks. And I said, well, hopefully she's not mailing the checks to, like, other people as well, or businesses or strangers or something. And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, does your father have financial power of attorney? She said, I'm pretty sure. And I said, okay, so then this is what I would recommend. Have him change the checking account. Just cancel that one out, but leave her the checks and let her keep having fun writing checks. She's writing checks on a dead account. She's not going to know that. You know, she's far enough along that it would be confrontational to say to her, you can't do this and all that. Why go there, you know? Your goal should always be to maintain peace. So just change the checking account and let her have fun writing checks. Yep.
Yeah, I had a very good friend who got scammed multiple times. And, you know, with dementia, I had another friend whose dad was a super savvy business person, and, you know, he wanted control of his investments, and they had to pull that back. And then it was the credit cards, and he was purchasing stuff online all the time. Then he started doing day trading himself that they didn't know about. And, you know, they had to take the car away, and he was always one step ahead. And he's like, I can use an Uber, you know. And so, but again, it's a game you have to play to make sure that they are, you know, are protected and safe. And there's so many ways to be able to do that in a dignified fashion and allow that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, you know, I have a whole section in this book about lying, and I highly recommend it with dementia. It's a skill you really want to cultivate, and you know, definitely with financial matters, lying is your friend. You know, like I suggested to my friend, you know, just changing the checking account and not telling her. You know, however you want to do it to keep peace, it's better than having that confrontation. But early on, if you can get the person to agree, you know, at least to turn over financial power of attorney to someone else. When they have moments of lucidity, you're gonna be better off taking care of that right away, and particularly end of life. I had someone in my support group whose mother was at the end and was dying and had never had refused to make her wishes known, and this woman had to make a decision to to withhold, to basically euthanize her by withholding, fluids and food when it got to the point where she couldn't swallow anymore. And, it's the most humane decision to make, but she shouldn't have had to make that on her own.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm going to give a plug for two resources, and I don't know if you're aware of them. One is Compassionate Choice, and they actually have a segment in there that's a tool for dementia that you can add on to your healthcare directive. And they have some great, great things. And then there's also an app called Careful, and it can monitor all the financing. So if someone's paying, double bills, or maybe they're not paying the bills, or things are going out to strangers, patterns have changed. When someone's earlier on, that's a nice way to be able to monitor, to know when you kind of got to up the ante, with things, as things progress. I want to ask you a couple more questions. Then I want to pull Kate in and just ask for some comments from her. But, how as a caregiver do you avoid stress and getting related illnesses? I know for myself, all of a sudden I had acid reflux. I was getting headaches. And no one ever mentioned it might be tied in to, caring for my mom and my dad. But then after that left, it was like, poof, I don't have any of this stuff anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there are, listen, caregiver stress is a very real thing, and the medical community knows that, and they know that the caregivers, particularly of people with dementia, are very likely to get ill and even die before the person they're caring for. The person with dementia has no stress. Every moment's new, right? If they have a meltdown, it's over in 15 minutes, and 15 minutes after that, they don't remember it. But the caregiver remembers it 15 days later. So, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that stress exists. This is I'm in a danger zone here of stress. I think meditation is a really good technique. I've written about that in this book. And, there's just the basic things like exercise and also talking to someone. If you can find a support group, that's really beneficial. But if not, find someone who you can talk to who understands, hopefully who either is going through the same thing or has gone through it, so you don't run into people not understanding what you're going through, which can be really difficult and damaging. But you have to take that on as like, okay, this stress exists in my life. I can't deny it's here. So what am I going to do about it? And really be proactive about it. Yep.
Yeah, I found even just deep breathing and some yoga, which I don't do anymore, but I really should get back into that, was just life-changing. I mean, I always remember growing up, my mom would say, count to 10, before I reacted. And it was like, oh, there was a reason for that. It was to get myself centered. So now I just take some deep breaths, and I don't think people understand how that actually changes the chemistry in your body just by taking some deep breaths. Life can be so simple if we just kind of slow down and pay attention to our bodies and what they're telling us and how they're reacting. And same with the person with dementia. I see so many families wanting someone to speak to them the way they used to, and they totally ignore the body language. And did you go through a phase with your dad with that? Or I kind of feel like people who are really stemmed and feel like the love connection isn't gone still see that body language, but that's
well,
been my experience.
I mean, at the point when language got broken and it's come to be called word salad in the world of Alzheimer's, I listened to the intonation of his voice, and looked at body language also. Mostly I listened to the intonation, and it's usually, if you do that, you can figure out if the person is upset, or if they're amused by something, or they want something. That's usually there in the intonation of their voice.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm going to just pull Kate in here really quick and see. Kate, do you have any comments? I know we've covered a lot of territory, and one of them was lying to somebody with dementia, what I like to call fiblets, to just make things still be fluid. What are your thoughts? On
Patty, before I became a patient, I was a caregiver. So I thought I knew everything, but no. Until I lived in this dementia world, I'm going through all the emotions, and then I could tell that, oh, okay, I'm a wanderer. I wander around, and I did not know what that was before I had FTD. So now I can differentiate between Alzheimer's, FTD, really. So anyway, there's so many. I don't know how to say this. I was angry as a caregiver because I was frustrated, not at the patient, but the workers that didn't understand that it is not their fault. I think they need more education in the field of Alzheimer's or any kind of dementia, and they cannot be just let out there, all right, now you work for the dementia unit. Dementia is not just like pneumonia or a broken hip, or they really, really, really need to have more education on this disease. And then also, after I had dementia, I had another kind of anger. It is an anger that there's education out there, and there's advocacy like everywhere, what we are doing right now. But they're not interested, and this I learned, and I experienced it myself from a lot of, I'm with several support groups, and all I hear is loneliness, and they're angry because they seem to feel like, oh, hey, I'm not a piece of furniture. They're just at a party or family get together, and they're being ignored. Or, you talk to somebody about me, and I'm sitting here, and I can still understand, especially in middle stages. It doesn't mean that once you're diagnosed, you forget everything. I still am a person. Look at me. It's like when I was with patients, I had my own side business, let's say, after I stopped working for a facility, and I work with mainly professors because this is a campus town, emeritus. So I look in their eyes a lot, and I always ask, who's your best friend? Because it seems like all they do is talk to me all day long, and then each one of them, at whatever stages it is, try to think, and they have no best friend. I say, what about way back when you were working? Who's your best friend? They didn't. You'd be surprised. You're so famous, and you don't have a best friend to talk to about this. And I was really angry that nobody talks to them. They are isolated because even their families don't believe them. I am one of those people. Yeah. My children do not accept it. So under all that anger, like you said, there is something else. It is loss. For me, it is loss. The loss of family, the loss of friends, the loss of grandchildren, the loss of independency, and the worst of all is grandchildren. Because I have 2 grandchildren that's in another state that I don't see at all. And I have about 4 grandchildren here in in the state, in the same town, and I'm only called if I'm needed. And then, hey, where's my dementia? Aren't you worried that I will hurt your children? But could I take the child from A to B, 4 doors away to the other grandmother, driving my car? No. But my neuropsychologist never said I could not drive yet. That was the early stage. Right away, not only did I lose my grandchildren, I could not babysit them, but I also have never been shopping with my grandchildren. And my son agreed with the girlfriend that they didn't bring my grandchildren to see me. I mean, that is a very, very big loss. This is when we need support. Not only me. I'm speaking for all my dementia friends in support groups. Mm-hmm. And yes, under that anger is loss. It's definitely a loss. A loss of so many things. And about what do I do when I'm angry? And I'm beginning to have sundowning. I prepare for it because life goes on. There's other things. There's bills, there's husband, there's, all kinds of things that go on. I get very, very frustrated. And so I will have to either outwardly get angry, frustrated, or just find a way of giving of myself to somebody else, just like Laurie's big name of what's that, Laurie? Shifting from crisis to comfort.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm comforting the other person, or comforting myself, and that's rather selfish. But it does shift my way of thinking, but not for long. I will come back to being the dementia person again.
Yeah.
And
well,
I
thank
also
you for sharing that.
How hard it is to be a caregiver like yourself and Laurie. I read a bit of Floating in the Deep End, and I just want you to know that I do really understand.
Oh,
great.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Patti, I have a few more questions for you,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
One is, how do you think people should try to navigate those quick turns in the disease, when, things are like going along and then all of a sudden you just kind of hit that bump and things just kind of blow up and are no longer the same. How did you do that, and how do you recommend others deal with those deep turns?
Well, I think you have to just take it in the moment. Whenever I went up to my parents' house, before I walked through the front door, I would tell myself, I don't know what I'm going to encounter here. I don't know what today is going to be like. I don't know what my father's going to be like. I don't know what he's going to say, what he's going to do. I don't know, but I'm going to stay open to it. So I think that's one thing. But I also think I've always said to people, and I've written about this also in Floating in the Deep End, that before asking what you should do in a situation, check in with who you are being right then. If it's a parent and you're still the resentful 17-year-old who, had issues with that parent, nothing you do is going to work because that's what you're leading with. And on an intuitive level, the person with dementia is going to pick up on it. They may have lost cognitive skills, but their intuitions and what they absorb emotionally are still there. So, resentful 17-year-olds don't do very well in difficult situations. So, address that first, because, form will always follow content. So I think that what you need to do in any situation, if you're coming from a centered place, if you're coming from a place of, okay, I'm going to be a responsible adult here, I don't care what went on before in the past. It doesn't matter right now. I'm going to show up here as a grown-up. Then I think what you should do follows from that. And you know what? Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. Changing the scenery, if someone gets stuck in a loop, works usually pretty well. You know, move them to a different room, move them to a window, literally change the scenery. So, you know, there are a lot of techniques that work, but like I said, if you're coming from your history with that person and it's a difficult history and you're caught up in all of those emotions, nothing's going to work.
I think that's a really good advice. Check in with who are you in that moment. That just makes so much sense. Because I think so often it's easy to blame the person with dementia for a situation, or we love to call it a behavior, which none of us want to be told we've got a behavior. That's not a good thing. And yet so often they're totally content till we walk in the room with our junk, being the person we are. And we think we're hiding it, but we're not.
You're never hiding it. We lead with our emotions all the time. You know, you can say hello to somebody, and if you hate that person, that hello is going to be dripping with your hatred. And anybody is going to pick up on that, right? So, you know, you can, I mean, you know, my mother used to do that. My mother was like the, you know, quintessential ice queen when she wanted to be. And, you know, she would go, hello, to someone and, you know, turn them into a block of ice. And then she'd go, well, all I said was hello. Yeah, it was everything around it that was the communication, not the word. Right?
That was the giveaway. But it's so interesting because people, I think, especially with dementia, feel that they can hide their emotions, and you can't. People with dementia can still read through that, and I think that shocks people when they actually learn that. But it's something, you know, to me, I believe it's innate in all of us. But as we get older, for some reason, people stop utilizing that tool, which is 3/4 of our communication. And
well, I would take it even one step further, and I would say that someone with dementia picks up even more on your emotions because they don't have the cognitive skills to rationalize what the emotions that are coming at them. They don't they can't rationalize and say, oh, okay, well, you know, Tommy's pissed off right now because, you know, he's remembering that, you know, what I did to him 10 years ago or something like that. They don't have those skills anymore. So all they're picking up on is the anger, the resentment, the irritation, or whatever is coming at them. They feel it even more.
Yep. No, I agree with that as well. You know, another big question that people struggle with is, when the heck do you pull in outside help, or do you pull in outside help? I think there's, you know, kind of this stigma of, what do you mean you can't handle it? You know, and people see kind of the scathing eyes, and they feel that sense. If it's real or not, I think caregivers just, they feel that people are looking at them strange if they're thinking about, you know, pulling in help or needing to place somebody. But usually
the people who are judging you for any of that, you don't need in your life. I mean, that's, I think, a big lesson of this disease. Anybody who is judging you for the choices you make, they're not your friend, and you don't need them. You need people who are supportive around you. And, you know, as far as bringing in outside help, I would say as soon as possible, even on a limited basis, so that your loved one gets used to someone else being around. And you don't have to say that they're there to take care of them, because that often is the barrier and what gets them upset. Say that they're there helping you out. You know, I need some help organizing things, or I need some help, whatever. Make something up, you know. But really, the person is there for your loved one. But couch it as something different. You know, couch it as that they're helping you. I would not wait until things get really bad and you really, really need someone, that's never a good position to be in. And the same is true about a facility. And, one of the misconceptions of placing someone in a facility, if that's their decision, and it's not my place to ever tell anyone what they should do, but, oftentimes that is the best choice. There is a regimented atmosphere there. There's 24/7 care. They're not going to wander. There are advantages to it, but one of the misconceptions that I've heard this a lot is that you're abandoning them if you place them in a facility. And my response to that is always, abandoning someone is driving them out to the Mojave Desert, throwing them out of the car, and leaving them there. Abandoning someone is not putting them in a facility where they will get qualified care, where they will get 24/7 care, where they will not be at risk of wandering off, not at risk of endangering themselves, we hope, if it's the right facility. And they will have a safe environment with people who know how to care for them. That's not abandoning someone. That's fulfilling your job as a caregiver and giving them the best care possible.
And I think one of the things that I learned, too, because I looked at all of those things you were talking about, but I'll never forget one day when I walked in and my mom was participating in an activity, and I just stood in the doorway in amazement thinking, I could never be her peer, no matter how hard I tried. Right. I could be your daughter, I could be your friend, but I could never, ever be her peer. And she had that back again, and everyone in the group was just beaming. And it was like, that just melted my heart and helped me transition. Even though everyone says, the person is transitioning, it's like, well, the care partners are going through a transition too.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah.
But understanding that, being tied to anybody 24/7 isn't healthy, for any of us on this planet.
No, it's not. And none of us were trained to do this. And it's too, it becomes down the line when bathing becomes an issue, dressing the person becomes an issue. It's too emotionally loaded. You can't deal with you don't have the time to deal with your own grief if you are a hands-on caregiver completely, particularly in the latter stages when it is absolutely a full-time job. And I think a lot of the reason that some people do take on that job in its entirety is that they know that they're not going to have time to deal with their own grief, and they don't want to deal with their own grief. So they use the busyness of caregiving to avoid dealing with their grief. We don't like grieving. It hurts.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to go there. I've said all the time we think that grief is something that we can, push aside, and we'll send it far enough away and it'll just disintegrate. And it doesn't work like that. Grief is not biodegradable. It will wait for you and it will come find you. You're not going to get out of grieving over this person. You're going to have to do it. And I would suggest doing it as it is unfolding rather than waiting for it to come find you. Because if it has to come find you, it's going to bring you to your knees. It will bring your life to a standstill until you deal with it.
Yeah, that's very true. For me, I found kind of one of those kind of twisted gifts in this disease, too, when I was really grieving and just kind of getting sucked down the drain hole, was coming to the realization that, how lucky am I to have loved this deeply to feel this grief, because so many people don't have that to begin with. And that really helped pull me out.
Yeah, we grieve because we loved. And I'll tell you, it's a lot harder to lose someone, whether it's to Alzheimer's or anything else, but we're talking about dementia here. Losing, let's say, a parent to dementia who was not a good parent and who you didn't have a good relationship with, or maybe was even abusive to you. And that is actually a harder loss because you don't get the sweetness of grief. You don't get the dimension of love. And what you have to realize is that you've been grieving your whole life over not having a parent who was loving to you. And you are feeling grief, but it just feels so familiar to you, right? It's an extension of the grief that you felt your whole life. So it doesn't feel familiar. It feels so familiar to you that you're going, well, I'm not grieving. Yeah, you are. But it's the grief that you've experienced your whole life. But I have seen people in my support group, envy other people who had a good relationship with the person they're losing and have that sweetness of grief. And that person who had a difficult relationship, or as I said, even an abusive one, they don't have that dimension to the pain that they're going through.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really interesting process. You bring up so many good points that I think are overlooked and can make such a huge difference in the way people not only, live with dementia, but just live with life in general. Because all of these things that you're talking about are spectacular to be used in the rest of your life too. Yeah. And I think so often people forget that. It's like, oh my gosh, everything that's good for dementia is good for the world, and it's good for you, it's good for your life, it's good for your friends. You will be taught such deep lessons if you choose to learn. If you choose to be open. And I know for me that there were times that came hard, and I would go in my basement, make sure everybody was gone and the windows were all shut. I would have a screaming match with God. Yeah. But I would scream out like, "What is the lesson? There's got to be a point to this." And typically within a day, and sometimes within 20 minutes, it would be boom. Oh my God, how did I miss that? But I wasn't. I was busy looking for the answer, but I wasn't focused, if that makes sense. And I was getting sucked into all the minutia that didn't matter, that really made me not be focused. So I felt focused because I felt so stressed. I'm like, I must be focused. I'm so stressed. I'm working so hard at this. But then I would let that anger out at God, and which I think, again, is a good thing. Just process it, and then I could breathe, and then I could really look around and listen and watch, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was there the whole time. So I think that's one of the other things that you've pointed out with, and again, we've just barely touched on things. What you will find in this book is just amazing. But to me, dementia brings us to a point of simplicity, of stop making it complicated and just make it work and make it comfortable for them and for you. And if we focus on, kind of the bottom of Maslow's theory of, are we safe, are we happy, are we pain-free, and we push all the other gunk to the side, it's really much easier to find the answers that you need. That are there, and it's easier to lie or tell a fiblet because it's all about comfort. You're not doing it to be mean or nasty. Right. You're doing it really to protect them and to preserve their contentment in their day and their comforts. And that's exactly.
I mean, you always want to avoid upsetting the person. You don't want to tell them they're wrong. A friend of mine who cares sometimes, visits frequently with a friend of his who has Lewy body dementia, called me and said she thinks there are men on the roof, and I keep telling her there aren't men on the roof, and she won't, and then she gets angry and she won't believe me, and I said, well, don't do that. Try instead saying to her, validating what I said, first of all, she has Lewy body dementia, she's hallucinating. She sees them. They're real to her. So say, you know what, you're right. There were men on the roof. I saw them, but I chased them away. You let me know if they come back, and I'll chase them away again. Yep. And he tried that, and it worked quite well.
Yep. Yeah, it makes such a huge difference. And it's so much easier to step into their space than try to pull them out of their reality. And I don't understand, and not to be judging, but I really try to understand why people have such a difficult time with that. And I had one woman one time say, I was brought up Catholic and we do not lie, and I'm not going to start now. And I said, I can't argue your theology, with you. I'm just saying this might make both your lives a lot easier. It's kind of like trying to convince someone to take a shower all day long and you're fighting because they don't want to go in or they don't want to get out of their jammies. Yet it's perfectly fine if we don't want to get out of our jammies or if we want to skip a shower for a day.
Yeah.
We don't have anybody breathing down our neck. And realizing this can be normal. This doesn't have to be an everyday thing, but we assume it's going to be an everyday thing. And we battle it, and we wreck our day for both of us where, maybe they just want to take a shower at night or maybe they want to skip a day, but not giving that a chance to work out. Well, Patti, this has just been just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. We only have about 4 minutes left, but I want to ask you, if people are dealing with kind of the first signs of dementia, where should they go for help? What do you recommend?
Well, I would recommend trying to find a support group, and if you can't, then find someone who is going to be open to what you're talking about. Like I said, someone who has some understanding of what you're going through, and don't. If you think of, okay, I've got to deal with everything all at once, then you're not going to probably end up dealing with anything.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you have to deal with right at the outset: driving, financial things. Make a list if making a list helps you sort of compartmentalize and take a deep breath. Take things one at a time. I mean, there are things that you're going to have to deal with right out of the gate, but take them one at a time. Just from the beginning, be aware of the potential for stress in yourself, and decide at the beginning, that you're going to keep that in check. However you have to do it, you're going to keep that in check.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And, for support groups, I think a lot of times people think of just themselves as a caregiver, but memory cafes are for both the people with dementia and the care partners. And what I love about those is it allows them to build a peer group that understands. Because a lot of times people lose their friends and family, kind of walk out like Kate was mentioning. And then there's also dementia mentors, where a person who's newly diagnosed can be mentored by a person with dementia, because they know what it's like, what's all the things that are going through their heads, the emotions, how they're looked at different, treated differently, all of those things. And so I'll give another plug for Dementia Map to check out. There's lots of great resources there. And so many of the support groups are virtual, so they don't have to be in your backyard anymore. So keep that in mind. So, again, Patti, thank you so much. Your book is beautifully done, and it really talks about the human condition, and how we need to care for ourselves as well as caring for others. It's just the guidance that you give in here is wonderful. So I really recommend that people pick up this book, and you can go to Patti's website, booksbypattidavis.com, or she has a website page as well, which is Books by Patti Davis. And you can also follow her on Twitter, and that's Patti, Patti, and then an _ Davis. Again, thank you so much. It was just such an honor to talk with you. I could talk with you all day long. And Kate, thank you as well for joining us. It's always nice to have a perspective of someone with dementia as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
May I say one word in parting?
Sure.
I want to quote, I don't know all the words, the late President Reagan. He said once, I think, to his, Henry VIII said to his sixth wife, "I won't keep you waiting too long." So I won't. I'll be very quick about this. I just want to thank you, Patti, because I've learned so much just listening to you, and I'm going to Amazon to get books. I read a lot. It says, don't need people who don't support you. And many people have told me that, but it did not sink in. And today it does, because I have just recently been very, very hurt. Like they don't even think that you have dementia to deal with. They talk to you at their level, and they're actually scolding you. And that is a no-no, and I've learned that's the biggest thing I've learned from you today. And I don't know, what do you miss most about your father?
What do I miss most about my father?
Yes.
Well, my father was a very elusive man, so I sort of missed him my whole life. But, I felt that in the 10 years of Alzheimer's, I made connections with him that I really hadn't made before on a deeper level.
Oh, nice.
I miss his great leadership, and I miss his sense of humor. Thank you, Patti.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And listen in for our next show on Thursday. We're going to be talking with Life Bio. All our shows are archived, and you can always find more information at alzheimersspeaks.com as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a blessed week. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebestier, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.